The Babylock serger. This is the Ovation. Hi, my name is Michelle, and today I'm going to show you a few techniques of what I've learned on the Ovation. So this technique is gathering fabric using the Ovation. The first thing we need to do is set up the machine. We are going to open up the doors to the Ovation. We're going to set our stitch length on 4. We're going to set our chain needle tension on 9. We're going to come across the machine, and you can see I have it set up for a 12-weight sulky thread. I'm using these full pins caps here so that the thread goes up through the guide much easier into your machine. The differential feed is going to be set all the way up to 2. And we're going to put on the sewing table because our blade is going to be in the lock position. We're going to close that door. We're going to close this door so we're ready to serge. I've taken a piece of fabric, roughly about 10 by 15 inches, and I've drawn a line down the center. The first thing we're going to do is stitch down the right side. I'm going to place the fabric underneath the foot pedal, and I always start with the needles in the fabric. So I turn my hand wheel toward me a couple of times. And on the foot, the presser foot itself, there are notches. We have the C2 and the C3 needle in. I'm going to follow the notch for the O1 needle, which is the overlock 1 needle position. That'll help me keep my stitches in line with each other as I serge. So we'll get started here and go all the way down. And I am stitching on the wrong side of the fabric. This is a nice technique to use the speed control on the Ovation. It has on the very front of the machine, so you don't go too fast to really get your gathers kind of out of whack. So I'm going to put the needles down again in the center line that I've drawn on my fabric, and I'm going to serge again and do a gathering right down the center. Alright, we're set with the center. And the last one, I'm going to turn the fabric around and I'm going to do the other side. I'm going to put the speed control up just a little because I'm a little bit more comfortable with that. Get the needles in the fabric and finish serging. Alright, so there we go. We have 3 levels of gathering. I'm going to take the fabric and give a little tug across the sides, and this will help even out the gathers. You can use this again for the pockets of the front of the bag, or you can also add decorative ribbon to cover up your stitches, or you can use your decorative stitches on the front. So as long as you stitch on the back of the fabric, your decorative stitch will be on the front. The next technique we're going to do is do some cross hatching on some fabric for your tote bag. So now we're going to do some cross hatching or decorative stitching on some fabric. As you can see on this tote bag, I've used the same setup on the machine. I've used a 3-thread cover stitch with the sulky thread still in the chain looper position. So I don't have to change the threading at all. It's still the same setup but a totally different technique. So what I'm going to do, the only thing I've done differently to the machine is that I am going to take the differential feed and I'm going to bring it down to N. I'm going to leave my stitch length on 4. And then my chain needle tension, I'm going to bring it back down to 5. Those are the only 3 things you need to worry about when it comes to the knobs. I've also added this quilting guide. This quilting guide is just a very simple bar that attaches to the Ovation, and it will help me set my lines so they're evenly apart from each other as I serge. Now, if you don't have a quilting bar of your own for your Ovation, all you need to do is make lines equal distance apart on your fabric. Some things to remember when doing this decorative stitching is you will always stitch on the wrong side of the fabric. It will be in the up position. And this particular piece of fabric is about 15 by 16 inches, and you will lose roughly about 1/2 inch on all sides after you're done with this particular technique. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have already marked 2 lines, and I'm going to serge on top of those, and that will give me my baselines to start my decorative stitching. Because I'm doing a cover stitch, I always start the needles in the fabric. So we're going to stitch here. And as you can see, my first row of decorative stitching, you can see the beautiful threads on the front side. So in order to make the same distance, I'm going to flip my fabric back over. I'm going to align my fabric up, and I'm going to place my previous row of stitching right in line with the quilting bar. I'm going to start my needles into the fabric. I'm going to start serging, and again I'm using this quilt bar to go straight down to the edge of the fabric. Now in order to get that cross-hatching appearance, I also need to stitch on the line on the opposite side. So I'll do 1 row of stitching there to show you. Always turn your hand wheel towards you. The nice part about this Ovation is it's got a great big sewing space so that you can do this technique. So you can see I've done just 3 rows, and you can see it's a little puckered, but once your cross-hatching and decorative stitching is all done, all you need to do is give it a quick press and it'll flatten out for you. So I've done this piece already, and you can see how beautiful that stitching is on this fabric. All the tote bags you can make with different techniques. You can do it in black and white. Get creative with your threads, and you'll really be able to make some stunning tote bags or other items for yourself and maybe for someone else. The next technique we're going to go on to is the bias binding. So the technique I'm going to show you now is using this special presser foot attachment to the Ovation. It is a 28mm double fold bias binder. And there's also a 36mm. But today we're going to use the 28mm. And it's kind of a different kind of contraption. You'll notice that there are 2 screws here and a plate here. The plate here is where it will attach to the Ovation. I have the screws tightened right here. It basically will move this piece back and forth. I'm going to take this to the Ovation, attach it with the 2 white screws that come with it, and you'll notice as I turn this around, this little notch right here is where my bias binding fabric is going to go. I also will feed it through here, and it will come out this area where it will be underneath my C2 and C3 needle. The outside of this bar here is where my other fabric will be guided to go into the bias binder. So let me attach this to the machine. And the biggest thing you want to make sure is that I just put the screws in lightly, and I can move this back and forth. And what I want to do is line up the opening of the binding foot right there, and have it placed right between these 2 notches of the C2 and C3 needle. Once I have that located, I'm going to tighten the screws. All right. Then we're going to take the bias binding fabric, and I'm going to clip a angle at the end, and I always want the wrong side of the fabric to go toward me with the point in the down position. I'm going to feed it through the back opening and take my scissors or my tweezers. You can also take a pin, and I'm going to feed it through. I'm going to lift my presser foot. And what I want to do is I'm using my thumb to lift up the presser foot so that I can bring this fabric straight to the back and underneath. And that way I know that my 2 needles here are going to come down directly onto my bias binding. The foot will actually fold it for me twice. I will take my fabric and I will lay it just on top of this base, slip it right through there. And I just want to make sure it stays butted up right against this little plate right here. I'm going to start my needles in the down position because I'm using a cover stitch. And again, you're going to hold your bias binding fabric up to the right and have your other fabric, the other fabric you're going to attach it to the left. So we'll start serging. And you'll see that it grabs it. And continue serging all the way to the end. And as you can see, this is when I would drop this one and pick up this one. And you can see the decorative stitching on top of the double fold bias binding fabric. You have a nice clean finished edge on both sides. You can use this piece for the inside of your tote bag if you like to be the pocket. And I'm sure there's other techniques you can utilize this bias binding foot. Again, there's 2 different sizes. Always do a test before you put it on your final project. So this is how you use the double fold bias binding.